shall start now.
Yeah.
All right. A very good evening to all present here, respected guests and every participant present here. Myself, Devang Singh, and on behalf of the Black Coat, I must welcome you all to the virtual conference. Today, we have with us 6 eminent speakers from across the industry. Now, allow me to introduce them in brief. First one is Mr. Lalit Kumar Dangi. He is the CMD Labord Group. He's a gold medalist in CA. He's also an FCA and member of AICWA. Mr. Gopal Krishnan Vishwanathan, CFO at TVS Credit Service Limited, a chartered accountant with 25 years of post-qualification experience, mainly in the area of financial services. Ms. Kanchan Gupta, co-founder of the CADA online arbitration platform, with 14 plus years of total work experience ranging from mainstream IT entrepreneurship to in-house IT. Mr. Venkatesh Chari, he is CA and an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, co-founder of Orega.ai, an analytic-driven full-service tech platform which allows lenders to intelligently manage their collections. Mr. Apoorv Agrawal. Mr. Apoorv Agrawal is managing partner of Universal Legal. Apoorv sir has worked with several leading law firms in Mumbai, which includes the like of Luthra and Luthra law offices. Sir routinely acts as a sole arbitrator for a number of commercial disputes. And last but not least is Mr. Lancelot Joseph, executive editor. For the last 2 decades, he has been actively tracking current trends in business world and has covered all major industries. Now I must give the mic to Lancelot, sir. Sir, you take over the meeting now.
Yeah, as Devang has just mentioned about me being a journalist for the last 2 decades, covering various markets and the ups and downs of the financial sector. So I would like to just get straight to the panelists. We are covering the protection of loan book during COVID. So what is happening right now, and everybody is in the thick of it. So let me take you straight to Lalit Dangi, who is the CEO of Labord Group. The group has been doing a lot of things in the financial markets. So Lalit, why don't you start with telling us what is the exposure that you have, NBFC has in this current downtrend, and what is the problems you're facing with COVID, and what do you expect from the government and the general market, look up?
Yeah, thanks, Lancelot. Good evening, everybody. As you are all aware of that, this COVID-19 has really disrupted operations all over the world. Actually. And we are not going to discuss the major problems, what will be happening. Actually, I will confine myself to what will be the moratorium, collection and impact on financial services. Since we are in the financial services, so we are experiencing all these things every day now. But before I answer your question, Lancelot, we'd like to look at the situation, what was before COVID-19 for the financial services.
Yes.
You are all aware of that. This ILFS and DHFL has really messed up the entire financial services, because these are the companies which are giving loans to SME sector, housing sector, small loans to the party, and they were doing with less due diligence than the banks. And since they have dried up their finances, the people were finding it very problematic to even get loans from any other finance company. You may be all aware of that. The total NBFC's finance as on 31st December 2019 was 26.33 lakhs crore. And out of this, 60 to 65% was contributed to the retail loans only. And out of even that, 11 NBFCs, which are the major NBFCs in India, they have contributed to the 44% of the total loan portfolio. Now, 26 lakhs crore is not a small portfolio actually. But if you look at the borrowing of these NBFCs, you will be surprised that 60% of the total borrowing by these NBFCs are not from bank actually. They have got non-bank finance and they need repayment immediately. And if they are not getting any collection during this time, how they will pay the money to the non-bank finance, it will be a big question for them. Because what data we have got it, that in the first quarter of 2021, the total repayment to non-bank loan for these finance companies will be to the extent of 60,000 crores. And if they are not able to receive this collection from the market in this quarter, then they have to go to the cash reserve. And cash reserves of all these finance companies, as on today, is not more than 40,000 crores. So even they dried up the entire cash reserve, still they will not be able to repay the entire loan. Why I'm telling you this, that this will be a big problem if the collection for the finance company is not taking place properly. No doubt this RBI has given a moratorium for 3 months from first, any loan which is due from 1st March to 31st May 2020, it can be deferred. And most of the finance companies have deferred it. But even after deferment, I don't think that people will be able to give money in time to all these finance companies. And there are many reasons for that. I will slightly put upon light on some of these factors which will be affecting all these things. First will be the important portion will be the economic disturbances during lockdown period, which has really given a severe impact on income of such borrowers, which will last long definitely and reduce their repayment capacity. And you are aware of that in the retail segment, which is around 62% of the total NBFC's portfolio, majority borrowers are salaried people. And as per the recent study which has been done by one private company, it is estimated that India and Indian working class people will lose jobs to the extent of 10% of the working class. You may be aware of that the last data which has been published by USA, 15% of the working population, they have the working population to the extent of 17 crores, and 15%, 2 crores 65 lakhs, people have already lost the job. And India is to lose the job as soon as the lockdown is coming to an end, which will create a lot of problem for the finance company. Another problem will be that the asset value of the assets on which the loan has been given in the recently by the finance companies, these people will not like to give the loan back to the companies. And they will say that, okay, you take over the asset which has been, on which the asset loan has been given. And it will be a big headache for the finance companies to sell those assets in the market. And mostly the self-employed and SME borrowers, which have been severely impacted because of the labor exodus from Delhi, Bombay, and many other places, will definitely find a lot of problem in their operations, which will affect their repayment capacity. Even I have come across many, in my company also, I have come across many people who have taken unsecured loan and they are migrating from urban area to rural areas. And to find out their whereabouts, where they have gone and how to get money from them will be a difficult task, and it will become a loss asset only actually. And as soon as the lockdown opens, which I personally feel that the people will like to preserve some cash for their primary household needs actually before making any payment for any installment to any housing finance company or to any bank, which will also create a lot of problem for the finance company. But how this finance company, like we also finance company, we have a bigger loan portfolio, but how these companies will start actually collecting these installments from the borrowers actually. As such, we have also started, like many big companies have also started employing many collection agents, and not only in a particular area. Previously, we used to give, or many companies used to give 10, 15 recovery agents and who will go to entire Bombay or go to Delhi or any other place and then collect it. But it will now not be suffice actually for them. They'll have to demographically appoint people, which will also increase the cost of the NBFCs, which will, as on today, we are having the cost of 2%, but time to come, the cost may go to 10% for collection, which will also create a lot of problems actually. Whatever collection strategy we had before few months ago or before a week ago, which will not suffice now actually. We have to concentrate more on the higher risk account, then we have to go for the soft risk account, then we go to hardest hit accounts actually, then we'll be able to receive money. But the problem of NBFC will not, and I'll just within a minute I will complete it. Yeah. The problem of NBFC will not come to end over here. Besides this, your collection problem, the NBFCs will be facing another dilemma also, which every company will be facing, because the business volume will shrink. So income will shrink for the NBFCs are concerned. Default ratio will increase, which will reduce my net worth and which will also reduce my borrowing capacity in the market. More or less, all these finance companies have been raising money through bonds and debentures, which will be a nightmare for all the non-banking finance companies now. Actually, nobody is going to subscribe for the bonds and debentures right now. No doubt the moratorium has been given to NBFCs, but again the interest portion is there. Interest you have to pay, whether pay right now or pay after 3 months, which will not give any relief to you. No doubt the RBI has also announced that NBFC will be, they have allocated some amount to NBFCs for this targeted long-term refinancing operations, which is known as TLTRO. But how many non-banking finance companies will be eligible to avail this facility will another big question mark for this. So what I say that I'm not saying that this, the outlook for the finance company is very gleam actually, but the reason is that those finance companies which will have a fresh attitude towards consumer relations in collection, they will have a better blending of this human and digital technology, will only have the edge over other finance companies will be able to collect it. But what we are foreseeing, we are discussing with many finance companies in the market, the next 6 to 9 months are going to be very tough for the finance companies. How many finance companies will be able to survive in the market due to default? It is very big question mark actually. So what I say, Lancelot, that now all the finance companies have to be very stringent as far as the collection part is concerned, and then only they will be able to survive on this. Yes, Lancelot.
So, Dangi, you gave us a good perspective of what is happening. I would like Mr. Vishwanathan to tell us something on the financial sector, what his company is facing and how he is coping up with the problem.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity, Mr. Lancelot. I think my earlier panelist, Mr. Lalit Kumar, has covered everything in detail. I think this is the same fate which most of the NBFCs, finance companies are going through. Even if you take the case of my company, so we are a mid-sized NBFC, and out of 2 million customers, more than 70% are in the self-employed space, milkwala, paperwala, so all contractors, rural people, small-time shop owners. So because of this COVID thing, they have lost their livelihood. I think there have been no sales for them the last 2 months, 3 months, and with their EMI almost equivalent to around almost 50% of their net revenue per month, they are going to find it extremely difficult to service. Now, more than profitability, I think solvency is going to be a big issue for NBFCs. Surviving this strenuous period of next 6 to 9 months, I think is going to be a big challenge for all the NBFCs. Even during the demonetization period, most of us went through this. So good customers who were paying on time till November, they started defaulting. And then, like Mr. Lalit Kumar said, bringing them on track was a very big challenge, because 2-3 installments if they default, bringing them on track is, we are finding it extremely difficult. Even though if you see that 90-95% of the customers are paying on time, they may delay, but the default is not there. But these type of customers, unlike corporates, they have the intention to pay, but the livelihood is lost, their capability of paying is lost. So like he said, it's going to be a big cost of collection is going to be very high to bring them on track. So what we are doing is that we are talking to each and every customer, doing a lot of data analytics stuff, segmenting those customers who are really affected, who are not affected, and then trying to structure them, give them some products so that their livelihood is, they will be able to come back on track for next 4 or 5 months. They'll be able to generate income based on which again they will be able to service the installments on time. And like even though RBI has given a lot of measures in terms of liquidity, TLTRO, it's not really benefiting the NBFCs. Most of the NBFCs, if you take, there are more than 5,000 NBFCs are there, but it's only benefiting a few NBFCs, top NBFCs, because banks again look at rating before they give loans to NBFCs. Asset liability mismatch is going to be very high because of this last 3 months moratorium. These customers, they will find it very difficult to catch up once the moratorium is lifted after, say, May end or June beginning. So liquidity is going to be a big challenge. Meeting the expenditure salaries of all the employees on time, I think we are going to face a Herculean task. We are expecting some more package from the government, mainly for the MSME sector, some credit in the form of credit guarantee, which will ease their cash flow, which will give more liquidity, put more liquidity in the system. All these measures we are hoping, but it's going to be a tough time because all the sectors are affected. It's not restricted to 1 or 2 sectors, or most of the sectors are affected. And finally, whether it's a corporate loan book or a retail loan book, finally the end customer is individual. So Indian growth story has been based on consumption, demand, local demand. That is going to be affected. I think again, NBFCs have been going through this crisis for the last 30 years. This is the 3rd or 4th time we are going through the same phase. I think we will come back. I think the resilience will be good. we'll be able to come back. But a lot of support is required from government, because the financial inclusion, what the government is talking, is actually being practiced by most of the NBFCs. So we last mile connect between the bank and the end customer. We know the pulse of the population. We know how to collect. We know how to sell. So, and for most of the banks, they are doing only wholesale funding. So retail funding, like Mr. Lalit Kumar said, is being catered by the NBFC sector to a very large extent. MSME, the poor people in the remotest part of the country. Still, if you look at my customer profile of the customer, around 70% they are new to credit. They don't have any bureau records. They don't have any income records. So we assess them. We, based on data, we find out what is the surrogates, and then we provide them loan. So this sector, is NBFC sector, is very crucial for the growth of the economy. We have been growing at 16, 17% the last so many years. But I think, like what he said, out of this ILFS episode, the things are muted down to a very large extent. And I think NBFC sector, I think, will play a very major role in this revival of this economy also.
Yeah. Vishnu, you were saying something about new products that could come out, from this, that you would think of for your defaulting customers,
Yeah. So we are looking at bringing out some products for them, because otherwise it's very difficult for them to service the loan. They have lost 2-3 months income. So they need some cash flow. They need support for them. So we are trying to design many products for them, which will help them in the short term, some OD products for them, so that still such time they get the bank credit. Because even today we read that the bank, they might increase the limit for MSMEs. But till such time they comes, I think they need some sort of bridge loan, which we are trying to address.
Okay. With that, I would now like to get to Mr. Venkat. Venkat, are you there?
Yeah, I am here.
Basically, you've been in the tech collection platform,
Right.
How do you plan to step up on the gas and collect more money from the, so to say, customers,
Yeah, if the customer has money, the experience in the last couple of weeks has been is that, whenever we speak to the customers, they either say they lost their employment or their livelihood, or they refer to the reserve banks and government advisory not to make repayments, etc. But fundamentally, we see that there is a huge economic stress, as explained by Mr. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. Lalit. It is very much there. People are unable to make a payment. But the clients that we work for, the engagement is getting deeper and stronger. Basically, we want to understand what exactly is the problem, which is every individual customer is going through. What kind of a solution that can be developed for them? As one of the areas Mr. Gopalakrishnan was talking about, creating new products. Not just that, we also want to understand what is the likelihood of this guy coming back to normalcy, and what kind of a time frame it is going to take. Every company that we work for understands that the moratorium has impacted the collections and it is going to get kind of phased out. But we have to get a gauge over how many more months that it is going to take us to get our feedback into business, which is very, very important to understand. In this unpredictable situation, if you don't have a visibility to what's going to happen 1 month, 2 months, 3 months down the line, and what kind of an impact it's going to have on your profitability, it becomes really difficult to manage. Everyone is now fighting for a survival. So with our platform, we are helping with that kind of an insight at this point in time, enabling people to engage. I think engagement is the most important thing. Many companies that we talk to, they've actually doubled up their resources into collections. No sales are happening, no credit is happening. So everyone is now focused on repurpose their entire organization into collections. Sales guys don't have a job; they are doing collections only. So the mantra has been engage. I think that is going to continue for at least a couple of more months before we start seeing some business traction, and people go back to their normal routines.
Yeah, Venki, you were talking about artificial intelligence that you'll be using. What kind of can you elaborate?
Yeah. See, look at what is artificial intelligence. Basically, it is an intelligence that you derive looking at your past historical data, right? Look at how your customers have behaved with you or transacted with you in the past, and try and predict how they are likely to behave or respond to a collection nudge. It can be a digital or can be physical. So that is what is artificial intelligence in the context of collections. The biggest problem that we are facing is that an unpredictable thing has happened. which has changed the behavior of the consumers for good. These guys, today's behavior, you cannot compare it to what it was like 1 month back. So the prediction engines, delinquency, probabilities, etc., all those artificial intelligence models that we have been built are based on certain premises which are no more valid for today. So this needs to be recalibrated. Now we have to understand, okay, this is a guy, he behaved in one particular way last month, and what is the likelihood that he's going to behave in the same way today? It might be entirely different. So we need more data points. So that's why I was talking to you about engage, and acquire more and more new data points about this individual, so that you can recalibrate the AI models that we are having. Once maybe I think we will need 1 more month of data before we are able to predict how the delinquencies will move forward. Yeah.
So while we've seen the problems that you have on the collection, and we like to move to Kanchan. Can you tell us something about? Have we lost Kanchan? Or?
No, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah. Basically, you're the arbitration space. So how do you do the online thing? Something known to.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Lancelot, and thank you, the Black Coat team for this opportunity to, get onto this webinar and discuss the problem that's facing us today. It's not just a problem; it is also an opportunity, right? So, answering your question, Lancelot, I'd like to pick on one meme that was kind of doing the rounds, on WhatsApp messages and Twitter and everywhere, where there was a question saying that, who caused the digital transformation who was responsible for the digital transformation in your company? Option 1, CEO, option 2, CIO, and option 3, COVID, right? And the correct answer is over there is COVID. And I think for companies like ours, this, while the need for it was there even before this whole lockdown happened, this lockdown has actually acted as a catalyst. So before I kind of talk more, I want to quickly, take a minute or so and talk about what we're doing. So we at the Cardar, we are an online arbitration platform. So we focus on small value, high volume kind of disputes. So what is happening today is, arbitrations are weighed down by, the same court-like or litigation-like processes which are trying to be replicated for arbitrations. And the biggest sufferers of this become like these low-cost disputes, because the whole time and money spent over trying to litigate those doesn't make sense at all. So what we've done at Cardar is we've simplified the whole process. We've taken the law, we've simplified the process, we've taken out all the prejudices or any due process paranoia that is there. And we've created a very easy, user-friendly tech platform to make the process quicker and seamless. So while earlier it took anywhere between 6 months to 12 months to complete an arbitration process, now in the online world it takes us, we complete arbitrations within 25 days, which means at the end of the 25th day you have an arbitration award which is legally binding for both parties. Now how this lockdown situation has kind of impacted is, manyfold, right? So one is that courts are closed, right? And for those few people who want to do physical arbitrations, they cannot, right? So as a result, online arbitrations come very handy because it's completely contactless. It can be done from anywhere. It costs a fraction of what a physical arbitration or a litigation would cost. It just costs a fraction. And it's easy on everyone, right? So, and that is how this has kind of come into the limelight. And I think for all of us over here, there are going to be 3 phases. There's going to be a BC, DC, and AC. So before Corona, during Corona, and after Corona. So where we see arbitrations helping collections, coming to the more topical nature here, where we see arbitrations, online arbitrations specifically helping collections, is the speed and ease with which arbitrations can be done. Now, the thing is that most NBFCs or finance companies and banks have an arbitration clause in their agreement, right? And it is something that people haven't invoked as actively as earlier. Earlier, and now it gives them an opportunity to invoke that clause. And having a platform, which is completely contactless, being able to do the whole process online seamlessly, 25 days, really a small piece of cost, no overheads. I think that really enables the books of all these companies to, change how they look. The moment the award comes, the entry goes from one column of the balance sheet to the other column. So I think this is really a good time to do that.
Yeah, but Ms. Gupta, I would just want to know how comfortable are individuals to get into this online system,
So we've worked with a bunch of people. So we've not only worked with an NBFC, we've worked with some e-commerce companies, we've worked with retail companies. And yes, like every new thing, before the first time we bought a book on Flipkart, we thought 10 times, should I give my credit card details? Should I do this? Should I not? And like that, even online arbitration is something that people are apprehensive about. There is a due process paranoia from especially, and forgive me, Apurva, but the lawyer community who want to check all the boxes, dot all the I's, cross all the T's. And we want to say that, look, when we are doing this, yes, we need to check some boxes, some I's and T's, probably not all, right? And
there are some challenges to that, which I'll try to raise up at some point.
Right. So yeah, so in that sense, this process kind of makes it, and the thing is, it's transparent. So what we've seen, and the best part of our experience has been that we use technology tools like email, messaging, texting, all these methods, to replace what sending a physical notice did, right? Like sending a notice and tracking it physically. We are doing it electronically now, which means earlier, if it took 3 weeks, for you to send a notice by registered post and get a confirmation that it was delivered, I'm getting it instantly when the mail was opened, when the link was clicked, when the WhatsApp message was read, when the SMS was delivered. So the tracking has been very helpful. And the biggest thing that we've seen is, in all the cases that we've done online so far in the last 6 months, that at least 10% of the respondents are willing to settle in the middle of the proceeding. So they don't even wait, to go to the stage of where the award is given. So somewhere at the middle of the proceeding, they say, yeah, you know what, I know I owe this money, so let's just settle. So that has, cut short the time further in all these things, the time as well as the whole emotional investment that goes into a process like this, right? I mean, when there is dispute resolution, there is emotional havoc. So it has also brought down that emotional investment quite a bit, because it's a very clean, easy, straightforward process.
So good. We've seen what the problems are. We've seen who's solving it, and we can see that, we're doing a great deal by getting people on board.
Yes.
But, you'll still have a lot of legal challenges in this, where Apurva will come in and advise to us.
Okay, thank you, Lancelot, and thank you, Kanchan, for the wonderful platform you set for me. I do a lot of arbitration matters, and we had some experience in the arbitration sector. Now, I'll just run through the next few minutes on what is online arbitration, what Kanchan and all others are trying to achieve, and there's some strengths and some challenges facing to that, so that we can have a better perspective before we take that part further down. Now, India is part of now what we call the global economy. I mean, something which happens in China gets affected in India, something will happen in Europe, India is affected, something what happens in US and erstwhile, India does get affected, right? So we cannot escape that mechanism. One of the factors why India has not been a preferred destination for inward investment has also been because of lack of a proper enforcement system where the commercial disputes takes time to resolve. So the government lately has been taking a lot of steps to go online and try to amend and modify the Information Technology Act, the Evidence Act, as well as the Arbitration Act, to speed up the process of arbitration and other commercial disputes so that the disposal is quick and faster. Now, I will just take you through some of the changes which has come about to affect what Kanchan is doing and online arbitration and speedy arbitration. One, let's just start by the Constitution of India. Article 21 talks about right to life and liberty that mandates a speedy trial and a speedy justice system, and has been interpreted by the Supreme Court and various high courts in lots of cases, which I'll not delve into right now because of lack of time. The CPC, the Code of Civil Procedure, has been amended way back in 1999 by way of Section 89 and Order 10 and Rule 1A 1C, which provides for out-of-court settlement, out-of-court resolution or disputes. Therefore, you're already providing for ADR and online dispute resolution out of the court system. So trying to take away lots of the case backlogs and cases from the courts to off-court and offline. The Arbitration Act, which came into existence in 1996, which has been amended several times till recently. Now, this is very important because it tries to resolve matters amicably through mediation, conciliation, and through arbitration. As of right now, this is a very good thing which has happened in the country, and is also given legal recognition to arbitration agreement entered into by communication through electronic means. Okay, not necessarily handwritten or typed, but by electronic means which is positive initiative towards promotion of ODR in an effective manner. The Information Technology Act of 2000 has conceded and recognized the fact of electronic signatures or digital signatures, as we commonly known as. Okay, so therefore that has obviously copied and taken into account the fact that the industrial model of law of electronic commerce, and therefore now that we recognize digital documents and digital signatures, it's a mean and technology which we can use for ODR concept. So therefore, if something is digitally signed and accepted, can be taken to court. Also, the Indian Evidence Act, okay, which was earlier Indian evidence did not provide for e-communication to be admissible in court as evidence. Now that provides for it. So therefore, and even what we call service to what Kanchan was mentioned earlier regarding whether the notice has been received or not received, now the courts under Indian Evidence Act has recognized e-service. That is by service through emails or SMS or WhatsApp. So unless if you can prove that number, that email ID is belonging to somebody, it is deemed service and can be used as evidence. Now, obviously, some of the strengths of dispute resolution through ODR and dispute resolution of ODR, obviously, time and cost management. I mean, Kanchan has mentioned that by online ADR, we can resolve a dispute within 25 days to 30 days. I mean, that's really great if we can do that. And I assume she has some precedents for stating that. Flexible and informal. The process is not as rigid as what happens in the court and is flexible in nature. Therefore, the parties can choose how to proceed with the matter and close the matter out. It enhances trust and confidence amongst the parties because it's confidential and it's not public in domain. And it allows also for communication through video conferences and evidence through video conferencing. Even High Courts and Supreme Court and the trial courts allowed to do video conferencing now. So that can be adopted, that has been adopted in ODR. So now physical meetings are no longer required to be done for alternate disposition, including online ADRs. Easy to access, obviously, information, and you don't have to be physically present, so you can be sitting like in the webinar in 20 different places, 30 different places, and attend an arbitration meet. Now, some of the challenges which we see in ODR, not in ADR. ODR is alternate online dispute resolution mechanism. which includes online arbitration, is one, the place and the seat of proceedings. The Arbitration Act 1996 clearly provides that there has to be a seat of the meeting. Like most of the time, if the parties are recognized Bombay, Calcutta, Delhi, or Singapore as a seat of meeting, in an online, that becomes a slightly a gray area where the seat or where the place of jurisdiction is, and jurisdiction of the award. We have to look at three factors in jurisdiction. One is the substantive and governing law of the parties, the law applicable to the arbitration proceedings. If it's online, what is the law applicable? Which city, which country? There is slightly gray area, which as a actor, we don't have answers to, but over a period of time, as it evolves, we'll probably find answers to all this. Reason why this is important, because then the award, when it's passed in writing by the arbitrator, where is it going to be enforced? So all these issues are interlinked. So these are some of the challenges which I foresee in ODR, but I think over a period of time, we will need to find a solution to this and take it on. Yes, I think this is for me for right now, and we can take it ahead.
It is time consuming, but the law, how can it be faster? Can be done.
No, it is time consuming. See, the proceedings before court and tribunal is time consuming, but before an arbitration on an ODR, there's a fixed timeline mandated to be done within 18 months, 12 plus 6 months. And the arbitrator has to finish it off within 18 months. If he doesn't, you have to take explain the rationale to the court and take express permission to the court, High Court, to extend that timing. Secondly, the Arbitration Act has also put a limit to number of matters an arbitrator can take per year. So therefore, he's not doing too many matters, and therefore can dedicate time to the arbitration matters in case he or she is doing arbitration matters. So by these two things, the time taken to resolve disputes by arbitration or through ODR, online disposition, is time bound. Therefore, within 12 months to 18 months, you're completing something. So therefore, it is becoming more efficient. And there is a very minimal court intervention in these matters. That's another plus point for this.
So Dangi, would you like to put something on this?
About
Faster.
Yeah.
How the courts can move faster on collection?
Yes, definitely the court should move faster in such cases, because if the court does not move now, then you will find that the financial services sector will come to an end now.
Exactly.
Because now even today, what Apurva has rightly said, actually, the ODR has come. So it is taking very fast phase actually in settling down the cases. But even otherwise also, I have seen in many cases, the case does not come up for hearing at least for 3 to 4 months to 5 months for smaller cases also. And in our cases also, we are seeing that 4 or 5 years, the cases are not coming for final hearing. So how these finance company will be able to recover their money when the cases go for 4 or 5 years time actually? And you will find that in this time, after COVID-19, there will be large number of cases which will be filed, and the courts are not having the sufficient strength actually to handle all those cases.
Yeah.
So they will be listed in masses, and there will be adjourned in masses, which Apurva will also support my view actually.
Yeah, Lancelot, if I may just respond to Mr. Dangi for a few minutes. The issues which you're raising are very appropriate, but that's why we are advocating that instead of going to court, in all the agreements which you have for the loan agreements with your so-called borrowers, to put in an arbitration clause with institutions or appoint the arbitrator upfront in case of dispute.
Right.
So that way, you have a quicker way of resolution to your disputes vis-a-vis the borrower. And an award can be enforced as an order of the High Court in any jurisdiction within the country. So that's a much more speedier remedy. And with what Kanchan is doing as an ODR, instead of 18 months, if you're bringing down to less than a month, that's a very effective remedy for you to start approaching and doing it. So let's not look at court as the only medium to resolve these commercial disputes. You have to look at arbitration and probably ODR as an alternate means of resolving these disputes.
Okay. Okay, I think we a little bit running short on time. We have any questions from the audience? Or then we can take it on with some more queries. Hello? Hello? Is anybody in the audience?
And so if I may ask,
Yeah.
Venkatesh, how do you use your software to track falls in the current COVID-19 situation?
Sorry, I'm not getting your question. Can you repeat that?
In the current COVID-19,
right.
How would you, I mean, it's probably the new normal, right? So
Right.
how would the software be changed to, track the defaults or?
Okay, let me tell you like how the collection industry is evolving in these COVID-19 situation and how they are trying to address this. See, collections, if you look at it, it's a kind of a progressively aggressive strategies are adopted to make collections. Like, if you're a first-time user, you just send them a reminder on SMS. If you're a repeat offender, like you have been, missing the EMIs for quite some time, then you take a legal action or if you have a secured asset, then attach that security and try and collect your money. In the middle, you have multiple strategies like you can do telecalling, you can do field. So here I want to point out one particular strategy which is kind of very important to the collections industry, which is field collection. If for an intentional defaulter or somebody, people call them a hard bucket customer, field collection is being there, and more than 500,000 people are currently employed in this field collection. Think about it, in this COVID-19 situation, this strategy is not available to any of the lender at this point in time. These 500,000 people are either being reskilled as telecollectors or going out of the employment today. So if this strategy is not available and lenders have to collect from these guys who are kind of intentional defaulters, only recourse that I can think of is actually having a legal pursuit, like Kanchan was mentioning, can be an online dispute resolution or something else. But you cannot collect it from the field. So, and I see that there will be a surge in telecalling, like bounces are going up. Therefore, lot more number of people will be required to do telecalling, and you will have a lot of requirement to do online dispute resolution or some other kind of mechanism, because now you don't have anyone to visiting the customers. Now, how do we address this challenge? Where the technology is coming in. I see much of the burden on telecollections is now moving to automation. Maybe one month, 2 months down the line, you'll be getting calls only from a computer, saying that you've not paid your last month's EMI, make a payment. People will stop calling you, and there will be a beautiful handshake between human and machine. If you are responding, if you're not responding, based on the feedback the machine gets, your call can be transferred to an individual who will talk to you. So that kind of automations and intelligent engagement has started to happen, and that way we see that the collections is going to evolve in the coming months. So online dispute resolutions, you have multiple channels happening or working on a particular customer on a simultaneously. Something is going to be the future of collections.
Okay, Venkat, we can leave the floor open if Devang has any questions from the.
So I actually have a question for Mr. Gopalakrishna and Mr. Lalit sir.
Yeah.
That I know it's very obvious that you people are the straightforward, affected by the moratorium and this whole situation right now. So I know Gopal sir talked about creating some new products. So what other strategies are companies like yours looking to take up in order to make sure that we're able to sail through this? And the second question I have is that post lockdown, things are never going to be back to where it was in February, right? It is going to be different. So what do you think will change something? One is changing for the current situation, and the other is what is it that will change permanently going forward for companies like yours? So any one of you can take that question.
Better lawyers like us to be told.
Yes, Apurva, Kanchan rightly said. Actually, at the end, I told at the end of my brief, actually, that now the attitude towards consumers has to be changed completely. And like what Venkat has suggested now, that you have to have a different technology. Like I also suggested that there has to be human and digital technology to handle the customers. Those who are responding properly, those who are not responding properly. And accordingly, you have to bifurcate the customer and then try to give a disbursed loan to those people who are responding properly, and those who are not responding, definitely all lawyers are there actually to take care of under ODR and other things actually. But why, Apurva, just you rightly said about this ODR, but one thing I just wanted to have a discussion with you, that we have tied this ODR and other arbitrations. Our cost for this arbitration was much more than the court cases actually. So if you can suggest this, how this arbitration cost can be reduced, because the arbitrator cost itself was very heavy in all these cases, because there is a fixed limit that under, if your claim is like up to this level, you have to pay this much. If your claim is up to this level, you have to pay this much. So how to reduce that thing? Another thing which we have been facing actually in recovering money from the people is that their collateral itself has gone down compared to their borrowings actually. So they are not worried about. Like I also mentioned here, that most of the people who has taken loan recently before 4 or 5 months ago, and they have paid 1 or 2 installments, their assets have deteriorated in value. They are just saying, they are just sending the key of their property and saying that, okay, you take it away and then whatever you want to do, you do it. So such type of things will be faced a lot by all these finance companies coming times actually, where the property like vehicles are there or small other apparatus are there, that they will be facing a lot. If you can, Apurva, if you can put some light on this, how this arbitration cost can be reduced. Till now we have tried actually, but we would also could not get through in this process properly.
Okay.
What, Mr. Lalit?
On the arbitration cost, if I may answer that, Lancelot. See, I think, Lalit, since you guys are doing a lot of volume cases, I mean, we've been using Kanchan's as a platform for some online disputes. They provide very cost-effective solution for arbitrations in India, at least for small amounts like yours, which may range from 50,000 to a few lakh rupees or more, So I think we can, Kanchan can speak to you offline and discuss the cost factor on that. And if it has to be a physical arbitration, you don't prefer an ODR, then there are lots of law firms and lawyers like us who have a mechanism where we charge you a proportion of or a lump sum on the amount so claimed and not as a per hearing cases, So that's one way of looking at things. There are lots of lawyers who are available who act as arbitrators in such kind of matters. Secondly, we have to choose your arbitrators wisely. I mean, the most difficult question which we face, when clients come to us to act for an arbitration matter, we need a senior person, we need a retired High Court judge, we need a retired Supreme Court judge as a arbitrator. Yes, we all need that, but they're expensive.
They are very expensive.
Okay, we don't need them necessarily in all the matters. Okay, you can do with even ordinary lawyers or chartered accountants if it's a money claim and educating them on, as your arbitrators who will obviously come at a more reasonable price than what a retired High Court or Supreme Court judge would be. Thirdly, obviously the other fact is the venue of the arbitration. Now, which is a cost factor to a lot of people. There are a lot of conference rooms and meeting rooms available at a fraction of a cost, rather than going and sitting in a 5-star hotel for your arbitration meeting, which most people prefer to do so. So that's another factor which you need to look at before you decide on the venue of the arbitration. So And obviously online dispute resolution, if you guys prefer that, that's a much better option because a lot of incidental costs gets cut down because of that. So that's my take on the dispute resolution on the cost factor.
All transactions online.
Lancelot, so can I ask a question? One question has come to Kanchan ma'am or Apur sir, anyone can answer that. The sort of online arbitration system that you recommended, Apur, so online arbitration or the CADR, that is catering to online arbitration system, has it been tried abroad? And if so, what has been the experience and what India can learn from the abroad if it has been tried?
Yep. I think I'll take that question.
Yeah,
thanks, Devang. So has, online arbitrations have been working in Europe, Brazil, and some of the countries like Singapore and Hong Kong for a while now. So India, by that standard, is a slight late entrant to all of online arbitrations. As a matter of fact, there is a European Union website. If you just go look at it, they have segmentized the whole arbitrations by industry, saying that if you have a dispute related to airlines, go and fill this form and then you submit your dispute. If it is regarding retail, then you submit here. If it is regarding financial services. So they have gone to that extent of making it online and segmentized. So has it worked abroad? Absolutely, yes. And it has proven in all these countries that this works fine. Insofar as India is concerned, as I said, we were one of the first entrants into this whole online arbitration space. And whatever cases we have resolved up until now, we've seen a good progress on them.
Kanchan, but one question, Kanchan, that in ODR, all arbitrators are who actually? Are they not required to be registered under the Institute of Arbitration?
No, sir, the law doesn't necessarily say that. And that is where the nuances kind of come into play. So the law says that, arbitrators need to have 10 plus years of professionally qualified experience, need to have been in managerial roles. And what we have done is, we have curated our panel of arbitrators. We do a lot of assessment, post which we do a training, and then they take up an exam, and only then we onboard on our panel. So, I hope that answers your question.
But you have the panel of arbitrators for your ODR?
Yes, we do.
How many arbitrators you have got?
So I have 7 active arbitrators and I have about 12 in the pipe.
Okay. So means they have to pass through some examination actually to become arbitrators.
Yeah, for CADR. If they have to become an arbitrator for CADR, then they have to pass an
exam. This exam is conducted by whom?
It is conducted by us, sir.
Okay, but yes.
Okay, Lalit sir, let me just give you a take on that. Under the Arbitration Act 1996, technically only lawyers with 10 years plus experience, chartered accountants with some experience are allowed to become arbitrators and company secretaries.
Yeah.
So that's a pre-qualification provided in the Arbitration Act. There is no requirement for arbitrators to be registered with any council or any body as such as of right now. There has been a talk to have like each profession has a own governing body, like the advocates had the Bar Council, Chartered Accountants, the ICAI, Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. There has been a move to make a council for arbitrators and a statutory body where all the arbitrators will be governed under. But that still now has not come in. There are a lot of institutions which have gone into arbitration, like there's a Indian Council of Arbitrators based in Delhi. There is Indian Merchant Chambers based in Bombay. Now we've got about 4 or 5 online platforms doing arbitration, like one which Kanchan is heading, which has their own set of registration process. So, but they all have different registration processes, and there's no sort of one common thread running between them. So that is what the scenario is as of right now.
Apur sir, adding to the question, does arbitration also work for a small amount of loans? For example, 1 to 3.
It works for any amount of loan, even if for 1 rupee going up to a few crores or thousands of crores.
And if we don't have arbitration clause in your agreement, can we go for arbitration, online arbitration for that matter?
Yes, we can.
And Venkat sir, can you describe about Aurega and how is it helping in collections? Yeah. Collections as well, the tech.
Right. See, if you look at collections technology, right? I mean, you have you use multiple channels of engagement. For example, if it is an X bucket, people use call centers. If you have to pursue a person on the field, then you use mobile applications, and there are different technologies even for legal. There are technologies which people use. There is no one single view of the customer. That's a big problem that we are trying to address. If you are on our platform, for example, as a lender, you will be able to manage your customer through different channels under one umbrella. So it makes the lender's life easier, and enables them to manage the customer's life cycle through different channels of engagement very, very seamlessly, which I think is the biggest problem that we are facing. So the industry is facing. So that is what we are trying to address. And many of the larger NBFCs are also our clients who are using this platform at this point in time.
So what is the outlook that we see in the coming months?
What is?
What kind of outlook we look for the market? You see the numbers coming down or going up, or
In what sense, actually?
in sense of borrowing?
No, the problem, Nancy, I'll just give the answer to this if everybody agrees. The problem with the finance companies will be there that the collection for them will be very less.
Okay.
And their repayment, which is scheduled in the next 1 year, is very high. Now, the borrowing from the market will be more or less nil, actually, because the market is tied up with any cash money as such. Neither corporates have got any money, nor the mutual funds have got money. You might have heard about the Franklin Templeton, which has also been financing to the finance companies as such. So the people will now not put money even to the debt market also after Franklin Templeton. So how these finance companies will be able to raise money even to repay their loan will be a doubtful task. Secondly, we have in this month itself, we have started seeing that the people are shying away from paying any installment, whether it is a small amount or big amount, whatever may be, and they will be lingering it. So more they will be lingering, then you have to go for settlement with those parties. Whereas as far as you are concerned, as an NBFC, you will not be able to have the settlement with either bank or from where you have taken the loan actually. Whereas your borrower will settle with you actually. He will try to waive the interest. He will try to have the cut in the principal amount. So ultimately, these finance company will have a big hit either in principal or in interest part, which will affect their profitability and the viability also. So, and this will happen in the next 1 year time because the COVID is not like 2008 actually.
Yeah.
COVID actually has created a mistrust and trust deficit actually among the people also. The people will be afraid to even trust on the other people also now. And they will be afraid of that. It is better to keep the money safe with the banks or in other commodities rather than giving to the mutual fund or giving to any other person or any finance company like this. So it will be a big task now actually. And no doubt the time will show actually that how the people are taking shape actually in advancing to the NBFCs. But whatever we have seen in the last 1.5 months, that the people are very susceptible in giving any advance to now finance companies.
So Dangi, how are you going to use your 350 crores?
No, 750 crores, we have launched it actually, but we will be using for the distress asset. We under the IBCs, those companies which are there, or those companies which are going, we feel that it is a good company which can be revived. And that company will have the investment that we will be having around 3 to 4 years outlook for that companies so that we can get good return because we have in our mandate, we have given that we will be giving around 30% return. Okay. So we'll be seeing good companies where though they have become sick companies only due to the finances, not because of the management or not because of the production or not because of any other things actually, which has got a good marketing setup, which has good production line, which has good employees in the company, and because of some finance problem, if they are set up, then only in those companies we will invest in.
Which are these companies that you have already identified?
We are looking at this now. As far as some no doubt pharma companies are there, but basically we will be investing more in artificial intelligence, what Venkat has told, because it can give you better return actually in any way. Artificial intelligence companies.
I'll send you my profile.
You can send definitely. Our CAPE is around 30 crores to 50 crores. So these companies will definitely have a good hold. And then another mid-sized companies which has got around 200 to 300 crores turnover and which has good market cap actually. And another companies which are in the food market, food supplies market, which is going to remain forever in the market. Definitely, we will not like to go in like auto sector or any other sector which are hit because of the hotel industry, restaurant industry, these things. But the people who need day-to-day requirement, that definitely industry will grow up. Like you have this Bhujia company like this. We are getting 2-3 proposals which are for pickers like this. They are making in huge quantity actually. So they will definitely survive well actually in the market. But definitely the technology will have an age actually. The people during this COVID time has seen in the market that if you have the technology, then your company can survive. If you don't have the technology, your company is going to doom actually. And you see in USA also, the companies which will be retrenching less people will be only the IT companies. Today, in their IT companies have not removed the people compared to the other sectors which they have removed the people. And IT will be the part because now we have seen during this lockdown period that the people who are happy working from home also, they didn't find that they are not working properly. They are working in the same manner in which they were working from the office. Like the TCS said that 30% of their staff now will be working from home actually, according to the salary and other costs will be reduced for the company. So the entire sector will change and scope will change. Well, like what Venkat said that this technology and air intelligence will work really very good in this market actually.
There is some hope.
Yeah, there is hope, but this is not like the 1930 or 2008 or 1960.
Yeah.
This COVID has broken the backbone of each and every person actually.
Yeah.
Because the people are so afraid of now, they have never seen such type of things in last 1,000 years also. In 1960, if you remember, there was Mahamari when the rate problem was there, and India lost around 2 crore lives at that time. People were not afraid of at that time also in 1916. But today, this time, even there is a death of 800, 900 people. But every person is scared of about the job, about the income, about the living, about the standard. Now the people in I just give one instance actually. One person who was thinking of buying a Mercedes now, who says that why I need buy Mercedes actually? I'll go for Maruti actually. Who is going to see my Mercedes actually? When I go to anybody's office, whether he comes down to see my Mercedes or he sees me sitting in the Mercedes. So the life of the people will change actually completely. And like the standard of living will definitely have a relook actually nowadays, which will affect a lot of companies, which are branding companies, which are high level companies. That will affect a lot.
Yeah. So Devang,
Gopal Krishnan, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how is the new moratorium imposed by RBI is going to impact the financial services?
Basically, I think they came out with the 2 circulars RBI, one on 27th March, where they gave a moratorium for the period, any installments falling due between March, April, May, they gave a moratorium. It's a breather for 3 months, but that circular was not addressing the asset classification norm or downgrading of assets. So they came out another circular on 17th April where they were able to address that also. So any customers who are standard before the date of COVID as on 1st March, they'll be standstill clause will be exercised. They can have the option to exercise the standstill clause, and they continue to be standard assets till the end of the moratorium period. So between the combination of these two, most of the companies are exercising that. They are ensuring that the customers are given moratorium, and they also don't move into substandard category or NPA category. So this is a trade-off between your profitability and also your liquidity. Like what my earlier panelist said, liquidity is going to be a big challenge. Gross NPAs are going to go up because GDP, I think, will move into negative zone with the predictions made by the Big Four and others. So I think we have to be very careful. Here, data plays a very big part here, analytics data, because we have got a lot of data, unlike earlier years. Right now, we have got a lot of data about the customer, his behavior, his customer behavior, his payment pattern, his income. So we have to take a conscious call, like what Venkatesh said. We have to stratify the data into various parts, and for each segment type of customers, we have to take a different view. It can't be one view for all the customers. If n is equal to 1, we'll have to customize for each customer. We have to have a different structure. And accordingly, I think we'll have to sail through this tough times.
How has it impacted the financial service sector as a whole? And do you feel it will the moratorium will be extended further by RBI?
There are two views there. One on moratorium. Number two, there's a view that even the NPA categorization from 90 days might move to 180 days. That may give some more breather in terms of not going to help the liquidity, but in terms of profitability, the hit to the P&L to I think slightly defer the provisioning norms also. I think between these two, we'll have to manage whether they are going to increase the from 90 days to 180 days. I think that will be some more breather for banks in particular, because the GNPA, gross NPA is going to go through the roof. It's going to go substantially higher. I think at least till the Q4 of this year, and next year, hopefully in FY22, once it's going to revive, we might see some write backs. But I think we are keeping the fingers crossed.
Kanchan ma'am, a question for you. What is the process? How does online arbitration process actually work? If you can explain in brief, and does Limitation Act applies to it? Is there any limitation period?
Limitation applies to everything.
So I'll take the first question, which is how does online arbitrations work? It is actually, it's nothing different from how a normal arbitration works, except that it is all online. So the way it works is that, we have an online platform. So the claimant or whoever, needs to receive the money will log a dispute with us. And it's a very, very simple form with just the contact details and a description, with a chronology of events saying that, this is the agreement based on which I had interacted with the respondent or the defendant. And these are the events that have happened. I haven't received what I was supposed to receive. Attach all the required evidences and hit on submit. The moment the claimant hits on the submit button, a whole lot of things happen in the background. So SMSs are shot out to both the parties. Emails are shot out to both the parties, and a lot of WhatsApp messages go out to both the parties. Right. So this is basically we are converting the physical process into the online process of sending a notice. Right. And subsequently, an arbitrator is assigned to this particular dispute from our panel. Before we assign an arbitrator, we get a declaration from the arbitrator saying that, based on the 6th schedule, saying that they don't know either of the parties in any which way. They have not counseled them or advised them in the past. They don't have family members in the management. There are a whole lot of criteria that is there in the declaration. They sign that declaration. Once they are okay with that declaration, then we assign the arbitrator. Once the arbitrator comes on board, he gives a certain, he gives dates, he gives respondent some time saying that by this time you please submit your response and your side of the story with evidences. Then the claimant is given some more time to respond to those. And finally, within 25 days, he passes an award. Now, let's say there is a situation where the respondent has not participated in the process, right? So actually, the excuse they mostly have is that I didn't get the notice, I didn't see this, I didn't see that, I didn't know this was happening. So we have all that ground covered with all our tracking, online tracking mechanisms, from SMS tracking to email tracking to links, whether they have clicked, when they have clicked, as well as WhatsApp tracking. So if an ex parte award needs to be passed, that will be passed itself. So in short, that's the process.
What happens in arbitration is the parties agree to the arbitrator. Like one party appoints one arbitrator, the other co-arbitrator, and then a third arbitrator is decided. Supposedly, if we say that way, the parties decide mutually. So if there is a dispute on the arbitrator, how do you deal with it?
If there is a dispute on the arbitrator, they come back to us saying that, why they don't want a particular arbitrator. If we find their reason valid, we will change. And right now, for the kind of disputes that we're working, as I said, we work on small value, high volume disputes. So we're talking about disputes ranging from about, 50,000 going up to, probably 500,000. So in these cases, we mostly we don't have a tribunal of 3 arbitrators, right? We have a single arbitrator. So it's, we've generally not seen an issue where the respondent has come back. Should they come back, we will change with a valid reason. Our rules are so framed that it accounts for all these situations.
So far till date, what is the maximum in arbitration?
Sir, I can't hear you.
What is the maximum amount you have got so far?
So we've done a dispute of about 2.5 lakhs. I mean, it was 248 something. So that is the amount that we've done. We've done a lot in the 1 lakh range.
Okay. No, on the higher side, what is it? 2 lakh.
So right now, as of now, the maximum we've done is for about 2.5 lakhs. Yeah, the dispute size,
Okay.
the ticket size, the dispute size, the claim size.
Okay. Great.
But the majority have been in the 1 lakh, in the 80,000 to 2 lakh range. I've had the maximum disputes in that range.
Okay. So these are the credit card.
Yep.
I said these are the credit card disputes.
Even the credit card dues can be arbitrated upon.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, provided the credit card terms and agreement provide for arbitration as per the credit card credit card companies issuing policy.
Yeah.
Can we do a quick time check, please?
I think we already crossed the time limit, but
Giving us a grace.
Devang, any further questions?
Only one that I received for now. It is if a force majeure clause we say, once there is, when we use the force majeure clause, can we skip the arbitration part? Or if there is a force majeure clause, can we skip the arbitration clause? That's the question.
Okay, let me answer that question. See, when does the arbitration happen? It happens when there's a dispute between the parties to agreement on any issue. Okay, so force majeure is nothing to do with the force majeure. Force majeure only comes in when the agreement can be executed or not be executed. It does not mean that you cannot resolve the dispute. So force majeure has got nothing to do with the dispute resolution mechanism. So in case there's a dispute as a consequence of force majeure or because of force majeure or due to force majeure, it will go to a dispute resolution mechanism which can also be arbitration, need not only be arbitration. Okay. The dispute resolution mechanism will be either going to the courts for resolving a dispute or going to arbitration or mediation or any other alternate forms of thing. So you cannot skip a dispute resolution mechanism or arbitration because of force majeure.
One more question has come for Venkatesh, sir. The user asks, does AI use totally exclude in collections mostly? Does AI use exclude the human interference totally in it?
It can never replace human intervention. So we look at it like pilot and autopilot and co-pilot kind of a strategy. So in an autopilot, this car, right, self-driving, it drives on its own. Nothing like that can happen in collections. It's more like a co-pilot. AI sits along with the human and advises him or suggests him the best possible strategy to handle a customer. So that's the stage we are in, and that's the stage we will be in the next few years. I don't think AI is going to completely replace human beings, but a lot of the operational judgments which are currently being taken at the lowest end of the organizational pyramid will move into technology. Technology will suggest, okay, this is what you should do as a next step for this particular individual borrower. It can say that, okay, now you have been sending SMS, is not responding to it. Now we think it's better you to make a call and tell him about this. So that kind of a recommendation engines will come, and it will say, okay, what is the best course of action? If you have to, is it better for you to write file a 138 case against this guy, or should you invoke a online dispute resolution? So these kind of recommendations will come. This is what we call it as co-piloting. So it will help the collection managers and the associates to handle the process better.
Pursa, if you could conclude the saying by answering about enforcement of foreign award in online arbitration.
Okay. Thank Devang for asking that question. I had it on the list, but couldn't really do it because of shortage of time. Now, just to give you a background, there's what we call the New York Convention, where India is a signatory to. Now, if you become a signatory to that convention or the Hague Convention, all the arbitration award which has been passed can be enforced in India if the other country where the dispute is or the party is also, that country is also signatory to that award or to that convention. So all online awards are enforceable in India, whether domestic or foreign awards. You have to go to the relevant court for the enforcement of the award and prove your matter there and get it done as an offline award would be. There's no change in the law or the procedure for that. New York Convention allows for online arbitration and foreign awards. And as Kanchan mentioned earlier, there are lots of countries like Singapore and some in Europe and US, which are already allowed proactively online arbitrations. So enforcement of that online award is not an issue at all.
All right, sir. All right, then if everyone agrees, sir, with your permission, if we may conclude.
Yes, go ahead. You can give your concluding remarks, Devang.
Sure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being present here. I must thank everyone on behalf of Universal Legal and Blackcoat for attending the seminar on such short notice. And thank you audience for being such a interactive audience. And thank you so much, Venkatesh, Kanchan, for attending. Now we conclude. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
On YouTube.
Thank you.
And
Thanks all.
Rajneesh, sir, who was not present here, but he helped us organize this webinar. So thank you to Rajneesh, sir, as well. Thank you.